Some dare call it conspiracy.
Welcome to the Some Dare Call It Conspiracy podcast, hosted by Brent Lee and Neil Sanders. After nearly 20 years exploring the world of conspiracy culture, we are taking our guests and listeners on a guided tour of the rabbit hole. Our mission? To discover where the truth lies.
So we're talking about the tragic murder of Henry Nowak, who was killed by a man called Vikram Digwa, who lied to the police to try and deceive people and make it about race. He claimed that he'd been racially attacked, and this turned out to be not the case. Now, ironically, members of the far right were doing exactly the same thing, deceiving people and trying to make this case about race. So much so that Amnesty International felt compelled to make a statement. And just before we go on, you can remember Amnesty International used to do those compilation CDs.
Yeah, I can kind of remember them being like Brit poppy, Brit rocky kind of.
Yeah, that was
stuff.
it. Yeah, because of that, a friend of mine that I went to school with was convinced that Amnesty International were actually a band. Yeah, not the brightest star in the night sky, but, you know, hey-ho. Amnesty International basically posted this. At a time when hate crimes are rising and violence and fear are becoming a daily reality for people of colour and migrants, calls for cold, hard rage are completely reckless. Henry Nowak's murder is an awful tragedy for his family, and his family have said, "We do not want his death to be used to create further division, hatred or tension. The very least politicians could do is to respect that." Irresponsible narratives of two-tier policing seek to sow division and fly in the face of decades of evidence of institutional failure within policing and disparities faced by racialized communities. This includes many cases of deaths in police custody for which meaningful steps towards accountability are long overdue. And obviously they're making reference to Nigel Farage's speech, which was obviously meant to embolden certain members of the far right. Not only did he call for pure cold rage, which we'll come on to in a second, but he explicitly talked about two-tier policing and anti-white racism and made statements to the effect that the white race needed to essentially fight back against oppression. The Guardian said, with an article by John Crace, losing support to Restore, Farage sees as a golden opportunity to bring racists back into the fold. A few months ago, we'd all have been invited to a press conference in central London, but now he's a virginal prisoner in his own home, afraid to subject himself to the awkward questions about the £5 million that he says he was gifted from a Thai crypto billionaire. So reform is effectively leaderless. All we get to see of Nige is the occasional video from an indeterminate location. He's a man determined not to be found by anyone. "We don't want his death used to create further division, hatred or tension," Mark Nowak said, all of which is water off a duck's back to Farage, because Nige is not the kind of guy to miss out. Who cared what Henry's dad had to say? Their tragedy was just their tragedy. Farage wasn't going to let such a golden opportunity go to waste. Division, hatred and tension, bring them on. They were his lifeblood. He can't survive without them. And what better time to use them than now? Just lately, Reform had been losing support to Restore in the Makerfield by-election. Now was the time to try and bring the 3% of the country who are out-and-out racists back into the fold. Time to let the bigots know that he hadn't gone soft. For Daesh, the murder wasn't a personal tragedy for the Nowak family. It was a tragedy that had been years in the making, a story of mass immigration, black and brown people coming to this country with the expressed intention of killing white people. British culture was under threat, so much so that there was now two-tier policing where the benefit of the doubt was given to foreigners. This was diversity, equity and inclusion gone mad. The streets were no longer safe for white people. He had this on the word of Alison Pearson, a columnist so mad that even the Telegraph doesn't promote her stories anymore. And just reading that back, the parallels between what they're trying to express, this two-tier policing, this oppression of white people, the idea that people of colour are essentially let off for crimes because people would consider that racist. What does that remind you of?
The Turner Diaries?
It's the Turner Diaries, isn't it? It's literally
Right.
from the playbook of the Turner Diaries. And if people want to know more about the Turner Diaries, please go and listen to our series, Reading the Turner Diaries. I think you'll be very surprised to see the parallels between the rhetoric of that time and the rhetoric of this time. It's astonishing, really. Leila Cunningham, who is the mayoral candidate for London for Reform and an absolute shit show, she went on the BBC, I believe it was, to defend Nigel Farage's claims. And Joe White, who was the presenter, basically argued that Nigel's comments, particularly urging pure cold rage in response to the case and claims of two-tier policing, basically amounted to incitement of violence, and that people would only hear rage. That's what, and it's essentially him legitimizing it, him giving them a reason. And here's the thing: they're not angry at the murder; they're angry at the fact that immigrants or foreigners or people of color who they don't believe to be English or British exist. And so it's not that they're reacting to the murder. They're using this murder as an excuse to do things that they wanted to do anyway, and to tie it in with immigration, with HMO hotels, with stories of other people from other countries committing crimes, to try and indicate that basically crime is a characteristic of being foreign or being of color or being an immigrant or being an asylum seeker. And that's obviously just simply not true, and the most ridiculously childishly base way of looking at things. It's tragic, really. But regardless, Leila Cunningham decided that she would push back. She says that the video of the incident itself is what sparked anger. And she argues that naming issues like two-tier policing and fears of racism affecting policing isn't causing division, but it's necessary to prevent future tragedies. And I would completely disagree with her. I said I think it's just a transparent weaponization of a tragedy, because, as I say, like the whole point is that they're wrong when they're talking about the way that he was treated because of race. It wasn't anything to do with that at all. And she's put in her place by Leroy Logan. Leroy Logan is a former senior police officer and also a gentleman of colour, and he basically strongly disagreed with Leila. And he says that he called out the White Lives Matter and two-tier rhetoric as completely devoid of any evidence to support it. And he says that politicians like Farage should and do know the impact of their words. And he criticizes exploiting the case against the family's wishes. He says the one thing that you were asked to do was not to use this to sow division, and you couldn't help yourselves. You had to exploit the situation. And then goes on to basically very quickly point out the massive disparities in stop and search and internal police discipline, which overwhelmingly favor white men. Like, it's just, again, the statistics are very, very clear. We've had two reviews in recent years, or the McPherson and the Casey reviews. These are two landmark, highly critical independent inquiries into the British Metropolitan Police Service, and both of them showed enormous systemic failings and an internal culture that was left something to be desired, shall we say. The McPherson report came out in 1999, and the Casey review came out in 2023. And they're widely viewed by legal experts, human rights organizations, and community groups as the definitive evaluation of the Metropolitan Police. And what they did was they proved that institutional racism, sexism, and misogyny remains deeply embedded in UK policing. So the McPherson report was triggered by the 1993 racially motivated murder of black teenager Stephen Lawrence, who was set upon at a bus stop by a group of white people and murdered simply for being black. The McPherson report formally judged the Metropolitan Police to be institutionally racist. And they said that investigative incompetence, lack of accountability, and individual witting racial bias was a feature of the Metropolitan Police. Years later, in 2023, following the murder of Sarah Everard by a serving police officer, alongside multiple misconduct scandals, if people can remember, like certain message groups that were floating around that showed, again, attitudes that were unbecoming of police officers, shall we say. And this judged that the force was not only institutionally racist, but now misogynistic and homophobic as well. It said that it had a toxic internal workplace culture, broken misconduct systems, and the systematic failure to protect both women and minorities. So, Sir William McPherson defined as the collective failure of an organisation to provide an appropriate service to people because of their colour, culture, or ethnic origin. And the Casey Review basically said that there was a rotten culture, a boys' club culture that allowed overt racism, misogyny, and homophobia to be dismissed as merely banter. They said that in the Casey Review, it said that black officers were 81% more likely to enter the misconduct system than white colleagues, and yet, like, what their internal investigation showed was that actually there was a culture of racism within the white police that was completely overlooked and just never was really sent for disciplinary action, or certainly not to the extent that it should have been. And it also highlighted shocking logistical failures, such as broken, overflowing fridges that compromised DNA, particularly in rape kits, leading officers to lament that due to the lack of care from this particular police force, that rape was essentially legal in London, which is horrific. So anyway, cold rage. When Nigel Farage said the phrase pure cold rage, what did it invoke to you?
Something fascist.
Yeah. I mean, what they tried to say is that cold rage is different to hot rage because you don't react. You just sort of, they're simmering and boiling away. But obviously, like, immediately your metaphors are all fucked up. You can't simmer if you're cold, can you? Cold rage, to me, I'd heard that phrase before. It actually means a calculated anger that would drive somebody, say a killer, to commit violence with complete emotional detachment and precise control rather than explosive frenzy. And if you read true crime, that is what cold rage refers to. So calculated planning, being calm, detached, or entirely indifferent during the crime. And also that the anger does not burn out quickly. It sustains itself over the days, months, or even years. And also that basically, so if you've got a cold rage, you would carry out methodically, step by step, including basically trying to make efforts to avoid being caught and to avoid leading evidence. So is that what they meant? Like, in criminological and psychological profiling, cold rage describes killers who experience intense, deep-seated resentment or anger, but instead of acting impulsively in a heat of passion, they suppress, calculate, and systematically execute their violence with a chilling, detached calm. Now, this is the point. With cold rage or with hot rage, there is violence. There is the implied violence. Do you want to know some people? Two people who have been described historically as having a cold rage. Ted Bundy and Anders Breivik.
Oh, yeah.
So when I heard him say, now Ted Bundy is obviously going around like, murdering women by convincing them that he had a broken arm and getting them, is somewhat based on the Killer from Silence of the Lambs. Aspects of that are based on the Ted Bundy case. Anders Breivik is the neo-Nazi that killed all those children at the in Norway at the camp, and he was basically. Whenever people describe him, he's described as having an ideological cold rage when he went about those attacks.
I remember this now that you said that. The reason
Yeah.
why I probably said something fascist is because I got this the other day.
Oh,
How to
you
Spot a
Umberto
Fascist
Eco.
by
Oh,
Umberto
well, there you
Eco.
go. There'll be lots and lots of notes in there. I think you'll find. Take a pen with you whenever you're going to read it. But yeah, and well, everyone
Right.
should read that. Has that got fascism in it? The 13
It
principles
has,
of
yeah.
fascism. Yeah, everybody should really, really go and look at that. The sort of the charismatic leader who's seen as a Superman. The appeal to a mythical past that never really existed. The idea of outsiders infecting. That the organism of a country is seen as being invaded, like in terms that are considered medical, or like insects or rats or vermin or things like that. You'll find frightening parallels to Donald Trump and also Nigel Farage and various other politicians all over Europe and the world at the minute, basically. And it's not by accident.
Like you said earlier, like the rhetoric of yesteryear is definitely coming around again today, and that's what I'm noticing when I'm reading it. It's only a tiny little book as well, but
it's well worth
recommend
reading.
anyone pick it up. Absolutely.
Again, the censorship, but again, like this is the thing when he's describing, like, if you think about the sort of the resentment in the pure cold rage that has been welling up. This is exactly why people were then went and rioted, essentially, like after Southport, after loads of events. People are looking for the excuse to express their simmering the rage, the rage, the underlying resentment that is being built up, and that's why people they're aware of what their words will result in, and it's ridiculous. And then other things that they're talking about, obviously, is this DEI thing, diversity, equality, inclusion, which actually we don't have in the UK. We have different sort of metrics of looking at it. And again, it's like when people were demonizing trade unions and stuff. It's it's all corrupt and stuff like that. It's like it's being corrupted, but it's there to protect you. You do understand that you're included in all this. The idea is that all of these policies basically favor minorities, and it's like, no, it's just to try and basically include people. It's and again, excuse me, the most sort of the biggest sort of group that is helped by DEI policies or similar types of policies is young women, or women in general, basically. So Leilani Dowding, smart person on the internet, posts West Yorkshire Police's Twitter, and she says, this is just one police force. Look at the amount of tax going on these ridiculous jobs. And there's jobs like head of diversity, equity and inclusion for £91,000 a year. 3 diversity, equality and inclusion officers, 45,924 a year. Administrative assistants for DEI and positive action, DEI and comms and marketing, diversity, equity and inclusion managers. And it's a huge amount of money. Basically, they're saying that it's essentially about £1 million or £1.5 million that's going on these types of jobs. And it's one of these things where on the surface it sounds bad. But then you look at it and you go, you do realize, let's have a go, Brent. What percentage of the yearly budget do you think that all of these jobs would take up?
10-15%?
No, less than 0.2% of the force's annual budget. It's very, very minor. It's meaningless. There's lots of other things that, if you're wanting to look at the financing of the police, that you could spend your time. There are legitimate concerns. There are legitimate things that could be done to the police force to make them more effective, but that's not this. Most of these jobs basically deal with the problems of unconscious bias, right? Okay, which ironically is the thing that the right wing are trying to say is a problem. So these jobs would basically make people better at that, hopefully tackle this non-existent anti-white bias. But again, people aren't interested. They just see numbers and just like it's stupid. C3 tweets out, the legacy media did not want us to know about Henry Nowak's murder. Legacy media did not want us to see the murder. And legacy media did not want people calling for justice for the murder. And profoundly stupid person, Elon Musk, post-tweets this and says, unless you become the media, you will never know the truth. Which is like fucking Elon Musk. Like, he talks like somebody that's just about to finish their first year at uni. Like, he's all platitudes and shit that's deep, man, deep. And this is bollocks, because like the legacy media was not allowed to tell you, but they did the second that the trial finished. The body cam footage, they had to wait for the families say so to release that. And they didn't want people calling for justice. The man's in prison for 21 years. What more justice is it that you actually want? What they want is they want to take revenge on brown people or immigrants, despite the fact that Vikram Digwal was not an immigrant. Like, it's outrageous. Colossal Intellects Right said Fred entered the fray. And they say, without social media, this tragic and avoidable death would have been swept under the carpet. The MSM and Labour would have looked the other way, given the opportunity. And again, that's not true, because details were reported in the local press when the crime took place. And the second that they were allowed to, the national press reported on it. This is a fantasy world where people are setting themselves up. Again, this is in the same way that a false narrative was given to the police that affected their understanding of the situation and resulted in tragic consequences and errors. That's exactly what these people are doing. They've created a false narrative, or they've presumed that the false narrative that they've been presented is the truth. They've grabbed hold of the wrong end of the stick, and they're determined to beat wildly around the bush with it. The irony of using, like, getting the narrative wrong and trying to make it about race, and that being exactly what the person did to try and get away with the murder, is not lost on me. Alex Jones, who's a prick, decides to tweet out, mass awakening triggered in the UK as public learns details of police purposely letting teenager Henry Nowak die at the hands of psychotic Sikh who plunged a dagger repeatedly into the 18-year-old as horrific body cam footage released. Tune in now. So, not the first time that Alex Jones has exploited the death of a child, but this is particularly egregious. They purposely let him die. The police purposely let him die. This is the same man that a few weeks ago was defending the ICE operatives that murdered two people on camera in America. This is a person that, for some reason, was defending the actions of Donald Trump that were murdering fucking fishermen in Venezuela, for a start. Like, this, he's a total detritus of a human being. Like, the rabbit hole decides to tweet out, we've overcorrected for racism. It's time to shift towards a more reasonable equilibrium point. A drug-addicted illegal immigrant, Elon Musk, a man who's got dozens of baby fathers and children that he doesn't see, tweets out exactly, with no hint of irony. Kagua's top gal tweets out, leftists killed Henry Nowak. And they've got a really classy meme. It says, there's a picture of George Floyd being knelt on, and it says, police kills black, which is a terrible way to talk about a human being. And it says, black people have a right to be angry. And then there's a picture of Henry Nowak being handcuffed. Police kills white. And it says, we shouldn't make this political. And we discussed this before, but the police didn't kill him. And also the picture that they're using, you may have seen this. This is one that was doing the rounds, and this was another way that they tried to criticize the police and just create chaos around this. By the way, Elon Musk retweets this saying, yes, they did. The police officer's hand, which is in a blue glove, appears to be like almost clawed, like it's got extremely long nails, like 3-inch nails, And this was circulated and saying that, well, this is ridiculous. The woman's obviously got fake nails on, or, you know, and she's more concerned about that and her appearance than looking at, you know, doing her job properly.
I've got to go down a different rabbit hole now and see if anyone started saying it was crisis actors because of that.
Put a pin in that.
Oh, no.
So the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, spoke, and this is reported in The Guardian. She warned of a dangerous undercurrent in the wake of the murder of Henry Nowak, who was falsely accused of racism by a Sikh man who had fatally stabbed him with a ceremonial dagger. Speaking in the Commons, Mahmood said one officer had already been misidentified and had had to move out of his home to protect himself and his family after receiving death threats. She said, the police in this country have a sacred duty to police without fear or favour. Everyone in this country is equal before the law. It's a promise upon which our whole justice system rests, and the equality of every citizen is the foundation on which the openness, tolerance and generosity of this country rests. Threats against police officers are utterly unacceptable. There can be no justification for intimidation, abuse or attempts to take the law into one's own hands. A police officer completely unrelated to this case has been misidentified online and subjected to death threats, and he has been forced to relocate from his home in order to protect himself and his family. Like, this is incredible, basically. Like, so already one policeman's been completely misidentified as being the man who took the body cam footage and received death threats and people doxing him online. And he's had to go into hiding, as did another police officer, a lady called Christy Hill. I'm writing this post with a heavy heart, both out of deep sadness for a tragic event and out of necessity to protect my reputation, safety and peace of mind. Today, my name and image have been widely circulated on social media and now by AI platforms such as Grok, falsely identifying me as the arresting officer in the Henry Nowak case. So Grok was giving this woman's name out. To be absolutely clear, I was not involved in this incident. In fact, you'll like this, Brent, I left Hampshire Constabulary in April 2024. The tragic events involving Henry Nowak occurred in December 2025. The confusion stems from a National Police Bravery Award media release. A photo of myself and a former colleague who's also been wrongfully targeted, that's the male, has been repeatedly shared and misattributed to this case. It is alarming to see how quickly a piece of outdated media can be weaponized by algorithms and accepted as facts by AI platforms, despite being factually impossible. Yeah, so the other policeman who was identified was PC Tristram Parsons, and he too had absolutely nothing to do with the case. It isn't entirely clear why people decided that these two were definitely the thing. It was literally just a picture of them together, and this was spread all over the internet. We know that Tristram Parsons wasn't involved with the incident in December because he was on holiday in New York, which is evidenced by all the photographs that he took of himself on that date in New York. But again, fascinating that people are furious at the police being convinced that this narrative that was not true was true, spitting out an untrue narrative. It's almost as if like that this is misplaced anger, that this is misplaced rage, that basically people are in a state where someone like, say, Nigel Farage could whip them up and could direct them and could like utilize them, use them, exploit them in the same way that he's exploiting a death. Now, obviously, the internet is a very stupid place. Do you want to know the next thing that they decided? That the interweb collectively decided who was to blame for this murder. Muslims. It's Muslims. Yeah, it's Muslims.
Oh.
Yeah, and again,
they're brown?
Put a pin in that because it will come back. But tweets like this was not okay. Henry Nowak was stabbed and attacked by a Muslim jihadist. Southampton police chose to believe the lies of a Muslim over a student. A student lay bleeding to death. They handcuffed and arrested him and believed a Muslim. Body cam footage of Henry Nowak is being released, and it's worse than we thought. UK police officers were told that he called a Muslim a bad name, so he was arrested. He had been stabbed. Yay, Islam. Other rumours of police cruelty start to circulate. Henry Nowak's case is worse than you think. 60 of the 67 minutes which he spent dying in the street were in the custody of police officers, and they broke basic rules of policing and pace. Pace is like how you interact with people when you're collecting evidence. Denying him basic first aid and compassion because they falsely believed that he was a racist. And so this was something that happened basically that after he was stabbed, he was there being essentially mocked by Vikram and the police for over an hour before he died. And that's not actually true. He was stabbed around somewhere between 11:20 and 11:30. The police arrived at 11:30, just after 11:30, and he lost consciousness about 3 minutes later. So it was about between 10 and 20 minutes after being stabbed. So where people are getting the confusion is that when the ambulance arrived, they tried various attempts to resuscitate him, and it was only when they realized that none of this could be done that they pronounced him dead, which was 67 minutes after the initial incident. But that doesn't mean that he was suffering for that entire time. It's just not the case. Rupert Lowe is disgusting, and two, he uses this opportunity to promote his own brand of hatred. Enough is enough. A deep line needs to be drawn in the sand. Talk is weak. Britain needs to say no more and mean it. A Restore Britain government with the British people's approval would put Vikram Digwa to death. He then continues, and apologies for the language, keeping this savage alive serves nobody. The police officers on the scene who allowed Henry to die will face criminal charges for gross negligence manslaughter. Digwa's foreign family will be deported. Laws will change. The country will change. Everything will change. Order will be restored. The law will be restored. Britain will be restored. And again, his family, where are you going to deport them to? They're English. Just again, it's shameful. It's shameful opportunism, and it's really, really tacky and just disrespectful. And somebody else that obviously is not afraid to be tacky and disrespectful is Tommy Robinson. He decides that he can actually capitalize on the death of this young man. I mean, sure, he was Polish, and previously Tommy Robinson hated Poles and said that he wanted all the Poles to leave. But that was when he couldn't exploit the situation. So obviously things change. And Tommy Robinson decides that the best thing that he can do is to go to Southampton. There's going to be a protest outside the police station, although exactly what they're protesting or what it is that they hope to achieve from this isn't entirely clear. But it's definitely not an excuse to get pissed and throw bricks at policemen. Tommy Robinson tweets, I'm on my way to Southampton. Since the start of the Henry Nowak case, I've watched people focus on everything except the real issue. A young lad was stabbed, handcuffed, while bleeding and treated like a suspect. Now there's growing public backlash, and people are asking serious questions about police training, priorities, and institutional bias. Henry could have been your son. He could have been my son. Let's see what happens tonight. That's, again, like, to anybody that's not stupid, that's very clearly an attempt to whip up bad sentiment and tacitly sort of encourage violence, essentially. And again, what is it precisely that they hope to achieve from going to Southampton? It's not entirely clear. The Socialist Worker wrote an article that succinctly puts it, far right exploits tragedy to whip up hate in Southampton. Far-right and fascist figures have seized on the tragic murder of Henry Nowak to whip up their hateful and racist agenda. Fascists, including Tommy Robinson, encouraged their supporters to descend on Southampton, where Vikram Digwa had killed Nowak. Up to 2,000 thugs responded, assembling in front of Southampton Central Police Station. The Nowak family has suffered an indescribable loss, but it's one that's being cynically exploited by the far right and fascist forces. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage called for pure cold rage in response. Similarly, Rupert Lowe, leader of Restore Britain, told his followers, "I'm going to look back in anger, and I urge you to do the same." Tommy Robinson called out his supporters using the far-right conspiracy of two-tier policing, and he's weaponizing the killing to build up his fascist street fighting force after he was essentially outnumbered on the streets of London on May the 16th. The crowd gathered in Southampton erupted into regular chants of Keir Starmer's a wanker. Lawrence Fox, a supporter of Tommy Robinson, told them, "Your fury and rage are completely justified." Nick Tenconi, leader of the fascist group UKIP, and Islamophobe and transphobe Posey Parker addressed the crowd as well. Tommy Robinson was given the final slot. He made claims of two-tier policing, saying that we white people are second-class citizens in our own country, and that Henry Nowak was killed because he was white, which is absolutely not true. The Guardian reported on some of the twats that have turned up. For example, they said that Robinson called for Digwa's family to be removed from the city. The fact that Digwa's brother is walking the street is insane, he told the crowd. Robinson, whose real name is Stephen Laxianen, maybe, claimed Nowak's handcuffing showed that there was different treatment for white people compared to non-whites, which again is absolutely not true. But you did notice that, him calling for them to remove a family from the city. Like later, people turned up at the Digwa's house and I believe tried to get inside. Luke John was there. He's the Portsmouth branch organizer for the National Rebirth Party, which is a fascist micro party led by Alex Yerbury. He can be seen at the front of the crowd in a brown suit, making lewd gestures at riot police. He's got a twatty moustache and a Peaky Blinders style haircut. You know the guy. He's dressed all in tweed.
Yeah, I saw the picture of the guy with the
he's
suit, the mustache, and yeah.
He's keen on the white race and suggests that white people need to rise up now. Unfortunately,
did you say Rebirth?
National Rebirth Party.
We got Reform, Restore, Rebirth, Reclaim.
Reclaim was one. Yeah,
fucking Lawrence Fox. Yeah. Like, what is it? What's next? Remix, yeah, probably. No, that's no
Recall? Remix. No, we can't have remix. Remix gives us the impression of sinful African rhythms, Brent, and you just know that they will not stand for that. So, but yeah, what's funny is
rewind. That's what we want. Yeah, it seems like they want to go back in the past, you know. So
yeah. Maybe that's it. Like the funny thing was though that Luke John has basically spent the last week deleting all his social media because he's filmed himself like attacking the police. And when he was asked why he's deleting his social media, he rather unwisely said, "I'm trying to stay out of prison." Yeah. Lawrence Fox, the former actor, in a sense, and failed politician who founded the far-right Reclaim Party, claimed that he wanted to depoliticize the police, and he said if this was a young black man the whole country would be on fire. Pointing to Southampton Central Police Station, he said those people in there are your enemy, they're not your friends. And he's like absolutely right. Like except no, he's not, is there? No one gives a shit when a young black lad is killed. Like this is just again an absolute fantasy land. Paul Golding, the former member of the British National Party and a man who's been known to hit women, now a leader of Britain First, an anti-immigration and anti-Islam far-right group, described the party as a street defence organisation. Giving a speech at the protest, he urged the crowd to take your anger and turn it into political action, claiming that the police were not dealing with the real criminals who are turning Britain into a foreign country. Nick Tenconi, the former senior figure in Turning Point UK, and leader of UKIP, who keeps doing Nazi salutes in public and then trying to claim that he's not doing Nazi salutes, said that he was pledging to begin mass deportations and to reinstate Christianity back into the heart of government. He also read the Lord's Prayer for Henry. Gregory Moffat, who's known as by his alias Young Bob. Moffat is a conservative activist. Yeah, dear. Yeah, silly sod. He looks a bit like a cassowary. Anyway, he gained attention through the UK branch of Turning Point, which is again connected to Charlie Kirk. He was suspended from his position in the group, though, because Hope Not Hate had recorded him basically saying that he didn't like Tenkoni from the UKIP guy. But anyway, he went down there and decided that the best thing to do was to film everybody attacking the police. Put a pin in that one too. Kelly J. Minshall, also known as Posey Parker, she turned up because obviously and started ranting about how this is somehow because children are taught critical race theory in school. And she also said that whites are always at the bottom of any priority list, so we're assumed to be guilty. Yes. Yeah. This is that famous plot point, isn't it, from crime films and stuff, where like they give the police a report, say, what happened? A couple of honkies nicked my car, and the police go, yeah, that's exactly the sort of thing that we believe. Mark Atwood, a conspiracy theorist, decides to get all sort of Dirty Harry. Like somebody called Britain is Broken says one of the police officers who arrested Henry Nowak has just resigned. Mark Atwood tweets out, resigning won't help him. Bloody hell, he's gone all Punisher. Jack Hadfield posts out that he was at the Southampton protest with Lawrence Fox, and Lawrence Fox said to him that the death of Henry Nowak was literally the most disgusting thing that he's ever witnessed. Which, some took to be hyperbole, but others thought that he's perhaps not that intelligent. So anyway, he said, obviously, young white boy murdered by these people. Your fury is absolutely justified. Fuck the police. It's the most disgusting thing I've ever witnessed in the world. If this was a young black man, the whole country would be on fire. There would be a McPherson reports, independent inquiries. These people are your enemies. They're not your friend. And this, again, brings up a fundamental lie. What happened when that TV series Adolescence came out? What was it that they were particularly cross about that? That
it was a white boy.
And what did they say was the actual truth of what was happening on the streets? And what right up until probably a week before this, were all of the right-wing twats talking about all the time, London's a no-go area. You can't go anywhere in London. It's black lads that are actually doing the stabbing. Look at all the black people killing other black people in central London. They can't even keep up with their own bullshit because it's performative. Like, if what he's just said was true, and what he previously said about young black boys stabbing each other to death was true, then we would have seen that, but we haven't, because what we've seen instead is an indifference and a tendency for people like Lawrence Fox to use the murder of young black boys, again, as an agenda piece, to say almost the opposite of what's being said now. It's just, again, performative shit. And it's aside from anything else, it's just despicably disrespectful to the victims of crimes like this as well. There was lots of speeches there. It was described by some as the Tommy Robinson protest. Zara Hussein tweeted out, at the Tommy Robinson Southampton protest, a speaker said, "Our nation has been invaded. Many of them bow down to the false god of Islam, but this is a Christian nation." She then tweets out, Islam has got absolutely nothing to do with Henry Nowak's death. The killer is Sikh, the police officers are white, so why would they include the anti-Muslim comments? It's disgusting and very disappointing for his family that his death has been exploited by the far right. Matt Goodwin, another Reform MP, tries to stick up for Nigel Farage, saying, Nigel is not whipping up division. He's calling for the removal of the policy regime that has actually whipped up division for 30 years. It tells whites they are racist. It tells Brits that they are oppressors. It tells police leaders, university lecturers, and that they are anti-racist activists, not neutral officials. It led Keir Starmer and David Lammy to think it's a good idea to give more lenient prison sentences to minorities. All this is bullshit. This is what Labour and Tories created. This is their legacy. And this is what led police officers to prioritise allegations of racism over doing their job correctly. They didn't prioritise allegations of racism. There is an argument that they didn't do their job properly, but there's nothing to do with racism, as we've repeatedly discussed. This is what allowed the grooming gangs to flourish. It's what prevented the security guard from stopping the Manchester Islamist bombing. It is what prevented officials from stopping Axel Ruda Cabana. It's what stopped them from detaining the Nottingham murderer. And it has now clearly also played a role in the murder of Henry Nowak. That's despicable. That's absolutely despicable to exploit those tragedies in that way. Like, if you see Matt Goodwin on the street, tell him to fuck off. If we want to end division in Britain, then it starts with what Nigel Farage is calling for. Treat everybody equally before the law, irrespective of their race and ethnicity. The fucking balls on this man. End political correctness. Reverse Keir Starmer's crackdown on free speech. Stop trying to control what we can say about some identity groups, but not others. Why? What is it that you're wanting to say? Stop politicising our supposedly independent public institutions. Root out all diversity. Hang on. Stop politicising our supposedly independent public institutions. Now, forgive me if I'm misunderstanding that, but is that Goodwin calling for communism? Nationalisation of the industries? We see you, pinko. Anyway, root out all diversity, equality and inclusion policies in these institutions, none of which are based on evidence anyway, and stop reshaping our entire society around this perverse, dangerous, un-British ideology. Only Nigel Farage understands what needs to be done. He's not causing division. He's trying to stop it, which is obviously powerful bollocks, but never mind. Alex Armstrong, who I believe is connected to GB News, tweets out, unbelievable. Sky News dedicated the entire TV channel to live stream the entirety of George Floyd's murder trial. The feed ran live from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., Monday to Friday. But they didn't live broadcast Henry Nowak's case statement. Let that sink in. Neither did the BBC. Only GB News covered it live. Do you see the issue with these establishment news channels and their unabashed bias? Shame on them. I mean, the other way of looking at that is basically saying, well, wow, GB News was only the news channel tacky enough to try and use something like that to leverage their own agenda. So anyway, obviously people will turn up at this protest and decide that the best way to honour the memory of Henry Nowak is to break down people's walls, destroy their cars, and throw bricks and wheelie bins at the police. And Tommy Robinson, who you must remember, called for the removal of the Digwar family from Southampton, tweets out, almost disbelieving, the police are now in riot gear defending the Digwar family home from the public. If only they'd showed them this amount of care for Henry, which obviously is nonsensical. Like, no, just no. Anyway, so obviously he made a speech. Now, I've actually watched this speech. It's shocking for a number of reasons, but someone called Selena J tweeted out, if reports of Tommy Robinson's appearance at the Southampton protest are anything to go by, he interrupted the 1-minute silence for Henry Nowak. He gave a speech where he blamed Muslims. How could anyone support such a pathetic bellend? Do you want to know how far into the 1-minute silence before he spoke and interrupted it? And this was all caught on camera. Like he's obviously tense. He looked like he'd, I don't know, maybe been running or something like that. There's a real sort of like alertness in his eyes. He couldn't quite stay quiet for a minute.
15 seconds.
Oh, he did better than that. He got to 25 seconds before he forgot what he was doing and said something along the lines of, who are those guys over there? He had a camera right in his face, and so obviously this was caught. his speech. This is a quality diatribe. I'm going to go through this, right? Okay. And at the point where you think that this might have got off track about what this protest is supposed to be about, I want you to stick your hand up. Okay, Brent?
Okie dokie.
So this is his speech. First of all, every one of you, well done for not remaining silent. Well done for coming out for Henry's murder. I've spoken about this for 20 years. I've said you'll definitely be a victim of a race gang, i.e. Pakistani Muslims. They'll be beating up white kids. Oh, there you go. Hand goes up. Yeah, you see, it's somewhat gone off the rails and it started to be about Pakistani Muslim gangs beating up white kids.
I thought it was the police.
Who's to say?
In these people's world, that they were blaming the police for it, but yeah. You know,
it's outrageous. Oh yeah, by the way, he was really performative. No, absolutely not. And he was really performative when he did this speech as well, which was clearly sort of like at least semi-prepared. Like, why would he be there if it wasn't to, like, you know, try and grow his public profile? That's what he's doing. He's exploiting this. But he turned up and made a big deal about, like, and this is supposed to be, again, a vigil for a dead kid. By basically being really performative and going, I'm not fucking doing it. I'm not fucking speaking. No, I'm not going to fucking do a speech. And then, you know, like, did a speech. Anyway, the police will turn up. They'll jump on the white kid. Every time I've seen it my whole life, they jump on the white kids. That what the whole world has now seen in Henry's video is what we all know anyway. It's a different treatment for white people compared to non-whites. No, it's not. Well, it is, but not in the way that he thinks. And we've all seen this spread through every single institution in our country. I can't breathe, the crying, the pleading. Do you know what's insane right now is that you see the scumbag's brother, who should be charged for perverting the course of justice. He's fucking lying. And a father and a message to anyone who wants to claim to be representative of communities, get that fucking family out of Southampton. The fact that the family might go shopping in this city one day next week and walk past that scumbag's brother who facilitated and accommodated the murder of Henry is an absolute. The fact that he's walking the streets is insane. Get him. He was fucking gone. I've got a video of him walking the streets this morning. He's walking the streets this morning. That's the brother. He then, for some reason, goes into a long passage about the rape of our daughters and says, we know, every one of you watching this know that if Henry wasn't white, he wouldn't have been handcuffed. So although I heard someone say this isn't about race, this is about race. He was murdered because he was white. There's two claims there, and they're both false. He wasn't handcuffed because he was white, and he wasn't murdered because he was white. And again, like, it doesn't take much for the mask to slip. This is Tommy Robinson, who claims not to be a racist. This is Tommy Robinson, whose fans say that you can't find anything where he's being racist, where you can. But this is explicitly talking about the persecution of the white race, two-tier policing, Turner Diaries shit. That's, if people don't think this is racist, I honestly don't know what to tell you. This has gone on for so fucking long in every town and city across the country, whereas white people, we're treated as second-rate citizens by our own government, by our own police force. And you have to look at the policing and their policy and their teachings. This is indoctrination into the police force. It puts up the accusation of racism, the microaggressions, white privilege. This is all in Hampshire Police Training Guide. White privilege. Does Henry fucking know it? Look like he's got white privilege lying on the floor, which is a very classy way to draw attention to his perceived disparities in the treatment of different races by the police. Mukhtar. I am Mukhtar tweets out, Tommy Robinson told his supporters to go to the Southampton police station, claiming he was only going there to report on the situation. As soon as he arrived, he was rushed to the front of the crowd. When it was announced it was be saying a few words, he initially pretended that he didn't want to speak, saying, no, I'm fucking not. But a few seconds later, he was on the microphone, claiming that he had predicted Pakistani Muslim gangs would start a race riot. The killer is Sikh. This had nothing to do with Pakistanis or Muslims. And he was basically watching all night, and he said, thanks to Nigel Farage and Tommy Robinson, they're rioting, and they're now attacking the police in Southampton. Tommy Robinson spent about 15 minutes in Southampton, led them into town, and then left. Now they're kicking off, attacking the police and injuring their own side with wheelie bins and traffic cones. The idiots are live streaming it. And speaking of idiots, Lucy Connolly, who recently went to prison for encouraging people to set fire to asylum hotels in Southport, tweeted this. And it's like, you know, sometimes you think maybe somebody's been given a bad, like, you know, representation. Maybe they're not as profoundly stupid as or ignorant as they've been portrayed. And then there's occasions like this where Lucy Connolly tweets out, if I were the police in Southampton, the last thing I'd be doing right now is trotting out the riot police and giving it the big I am. What does she think? That's it? Like, do you think that, like, right? Let's give it the big I am by dressing up in our riot gear. You don't think that maybe it's a response to a riot? Could it be that? She then goes on to say, your officers behave like animals. There's no getting away from that. No excuse. Show some respect and integrity. What little respect anyone has for the police is gone. It's time for the police and the rest of the public servants to earn the public's respect back. So apparently it is the police. Like, because as you say, Tommy Robbins said it was the Muslims. Yeah, obviously there's loads and loads of violence. I think about 11 police officers are injured. And Ant Middleton, he used to be in the army. He lives in Dubai. He's a criminal. He performatively claims that he's going to be mayor of London, even though I don't think he's allowed to be because of his criminal past. He tweets out at 11:30 at night after the violence has essentially calmed down, but there's been fires lit, property damaged, people hurt. He tweets out, well done, all in Southampton. So the following day, the Metro News, yeah, absolutely. The following day, the Metro News reports that Sir Keir Starmer has condemned the riots in Southampton on Tuesday night as disgraceful and completely unacceptable. 11 police officers were injured after they clashed with crowds who gathered after the death of Henry Nowak. Bricks and chairs were thrown at police as protesters, joined by Tommy Robinson and former actor Lawrence Fox, pushed towards the killer Vikram Digwar's home. The Prime Minister said that there was no justification for more violence and disorder following the demonstrations. And Policing Minister Sarah Jones said that 2 people had already been arrested for assaulting a police officer and possession of a weapon. She also urged protesters to let justice take its course and said officers are now scouring footage from the riot in a bid to make further arrests. And whilst all this is going on, everyone completely misses the fact that further charges have been brought against the family and the Digwar family. And this is not connected with the Nowak case. This is reported by the BBC. Dad and brother, Vikram Digwar's dad and brother in court on weapons charges. Vikram Digwar has appeared in court alongside his brother and father charged with multiple weapons offences. The 23-year-old who has been sentenced for the murder of Henry Nowak appeared at Southampton's magistrate court to face 6 counts of possessing an offensive weapon in a private place. The alleged weapons are flick knives, an extendable baton, knuckle dusters, a machete, swords and kusaris. His father, Moa Singh, and his brother Gurpreet Digwar are all on bail, and they appeared alongside him to face the same charges. Gurpreet also faced 4 additional charges. Possessing an offensive weapon in a public place, which is an ASP, one of those extendable batons. Possessing a prohibited weapon, which was a very powerful air rifle. Possessing an axe in a public place. Possessing a knife in a public place. On June the 3rd, Tommy Robinson's up bright and early to tweet out, like everyone, I was shocked by police letting Henry Nowak die because they heard racism, but not surprised. I grew up watching two-tier policing in action, and it's all on their website. The whole system is set against white people, and it must be smashed. Tommy Robinson would have grown up in the 80s and the 90s. Like, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. I don't recall it being a time where you got a hard time for being white. I do recall it as a time when the N word, the P word, the F word were liberally used, sometimes as punchlines in shows such as Only Fools and Horses, a beloved UK sitcom and a classic. The fact that racial epithets were used in that shows how casually they were used. It's absolutely ridiculous. We've discussed this before. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. When I was a child, we used to sing the N-word version. And not because we were cool and street and urban or anything like that. It was quite the opposite. It was because we were provincial and rural. And at the time, the UK had no problem with systematic, institutionalized and casual racism and homophobia and misogyny. So this idea that, like, well, it's been like this since the 80s, like, we can all remember, like, yeah, absolutely. Like, it's just, again, it's just complete gaslighting. So Iconic, the David Icke internet program channel thing, decided to have a predictably shit go at explaining everything. And for some reason, they leave it to God's spare grandson, Jamie. And it starts poorly. They open by basically saying that anybody that's watched the Candace Owens documentary on George Floyd knows that George Floyd wasn't murdered by Derek Chauvin, that he died of an overdose of fentanyl, and that Derek Chauvin, the police officer who kneeled on his neck for over 8 minutes, should be free. And it was at this point that I thought, you twat. And he's got this completely wrong. And this is based on people not checking anything and wanting to be racist. See, on page 3 of the autopsy report, it lists the drugs in Floyd's system, and they include fentanyl. George Floyd had 11 nanograms per milliliter of fentanyl in his blood. However, he was a fentanyl user, and that was not a lethal dose for him. So it was nothing to do with that. There's also a phrase on there that people keep pointing to that says no life-threatening injuries identified. And this is basically, they say, well, that proves it. Fentanyl killed him because no life-threatening injuries identified. In the forensic autopsy report, the injuries section explicitly looks for structural, mechanical, or anatomical trauma. And under this specific subheading, Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Andrew Baker was documenting that George Floyd had no broken bones, which means that there are no fractures to his ribs or his vertebral column. There was no internal neck destruction. There's no bruising or tearing to the anterior muscles of the neck or his larynx. And his hyoid bone was also intact. He had no skull fractures, brain bleeding, or ruptured internal organs. Essentially, the phrase simply meant that the police did not physically crush his windpipe or snap his neck or beat him to death. But the cause of death, as listed on page 1 of the report, is cardiopulmonary arrest complicating law enforcement subdural restraint and neck compression. So in case, anybody's confused by that, he was killed by a fucking policeman kneeling on his neck for 8 minutes. Then Jamie goes on to complain that the Southport murders, during the Southport murders, and this is again irresponsible and factually inaccurate, that the mainstream media purposely messed with people. Do you know how they messed with people, Brent? Because they knew that this man was a murderer. They knew that he was a right shit and that he was a psychopath. And yet the only picture that they showed of him in the papers was the pictures of him as a schoolboy in his school uniform. It's like they were the only pictures that they had of him because they were provided by his mum.
Remember
that. This is basic facts that you could check. It's not sinister, and it was nothing to do with the mainstream media. And then he goes on to say the fact that they lied about him and they allowed speculation to grow, which led to the riots. And in fact, they didn't lie about him or allow speculation to grow. The fucking opposite is true. the internet said with no evidence that he was a Muslim off a recent boat when he wasn't. He was a Christian that was born here. So what is it that they lied about? Yeah.
Is that Bernie, whatever her name was?
Bernie's tweets. Yeah, she was the person that started it. Yeah. Absolutely. How she got away with it. Yeah.
She said, if this is true.
Yeah. Again. But that implies to me that Jamie believes that he was a Muslim. And like people will say, well, he had a terrorist manual, a Muslim terrorist manual. It's like, do you know of any Christian terrorist manuals? Because if
the Turner Diaries.
Well, apart from the Turner Diaries, but the Turner Diaries doesn't tell you how to build a bomb. Well, I mean, it sort of does. Like, but not in such as explicit detail as a bomb building manual.
Something struck me when you were kind of talking about, well, when you started reading out what Jamie was saying, and I thought, gosh, how the truth movement or conspirasphere has changed.
Absolutely.
In our day, the George Floyd thing would have been presented as the police state.
Exactly. Indicative of a militarized police state. Or at the very least, that it was supposed to be a trigger to cause riots so that they could crack down on people. Now, it's the opposite. Like, it's even explicit with immigrants. You can find old, when 9/11 was the topic, don't let the media demonize, don't let the government demonize Muslims, don't let them demonize these people. And then David Icke and Jamie Icke now talk about men of military age coming over as immigrants and them being an invading force. It's crazy. It says that the video of Henry Nowak is why people are angry, but he's pretty incoherent in his explanation. He says, this lad's been stabbed, I'm presuming, and so I'm presuming that there's loads of blood, and the police officer is disbelieving him simply because another man has said he's being racist. And that's interesting because this is several days after the video has been released, and Jamie's not watched it, but he's decided to do a fucking program about it. It's a bold strategy in Cotton. Let's see if it pays off. And again, the problem was that there was no blood because the bleeding was internal. And they arrest him because they're responding to a 999 call, as we've discussed. He says that he blames the police for ending Henry's life, and he says that it's manslaughter, and that if he'd have received urgent care because they'd have believed him, rather than being more concerned with the accusation of racism, then Henry would have survived. And again, that simply isn't true, and sadly isn't true, but again, shows that Jamie's not bothered to look into this at all. He asks if it was a white man who had stabbed a Sikh, would it have been dealt with in the same way? And then says, I think we all know the answer, as if that means something. And I'm not entirely sure what he thinks that he's saying here. I assume he thinks that he's being deep and saying that if the tables were turned, then the Sikh man would have essentially been allowed to murder, or sorry, that the white man, that the Sikh would have been believed. And it's like this is nonsense. It's based on nothing. Like. There's no examples. Give me an example of a Sikh being given preferential treatment over a white person. It's a fantasy. And then you'll love this, Brent. Completely non-ironically, he says, "I think that creating division and creating racism is one of the goals of this cult." And he's not talking about Iconic and his family. He's actually talking about this mystical cult of Sabbatean Frankist Jews that, alongside the reptilians and the archons, have been ruling this planet since the Anunnaki came to Sumer all those many moons ago. And if you want to know more about that, we've got a series about David Icke's book, The Biggest Secret, which is coming out very soon. He then says that what creates racism is because there's a perception that white people are treated differently and worse than others. And again, fuck off. Where? Outside of far-right propaganda, where is that a thing? And we've said this before, but like, oh, so I've become racism because you've accused me of being racist, and racism is so bad that I'm so offended that I became racist. It's like, well, then you're racist. We said this in the last episode. This all falls down with one simple question. Do you think racism is bad? Then don't do it. Or if you don't think that racism is bad, then you're racist. Own the label. He then says that whites, that non-whites get preferential treatment from both the police and the court systems. Is he fucking mad? Like, but then he's worried that Sikhs will get persecuted because of this. And we've said, like, you know, you've literally just dog whistled all over the place, and you talk about asylum seekers as a secret army of military-aged men that have been sent here by a cult of Jewish partial aliens that are here to destroy our culture. But it is concerning that Sikhs might be unfairly labelled. He then says that the solution is people being treated equally, implying that white people are simply not. And he gives an example of how the media could simply tell the truth. And he says this, say yeah, it was a young Muslim lad that did this. And he's obviously referring to the Southport killings. And what's wrong with that, Brent? The lad wasn't a Muslim. He was a Christian. And his religion had nothing to do with the psychotic episode where he decided that he needed to murder 3 young Ariana Grande fans, or Taylor Swift fans. Like, just honestly, just the exploitation of this is shitty. He then says that he doesn't think that people judge others by race or colour, but simply by behaviour, which is obviously not even remotely true, because we've seen dozens of fucking examples of people trying to equate either immigrants or Sikhs or people of colour or Africans or asylum seekers or Muslims or Syrians or Palestinians as animals. So fuck off, Jamie. He then says that there's a 2-tier system in the UK that dictates how you're treated by religion and the colour of your skin. And he's absolutely right. If you're a rich, white, Anglo-Saxon Protestant, you probably get treated better than other people. But that's really not what he's talking about. And then he says that he's got sympathy with the protest because it's making people's voices heard, that the situation isn't fair. What situation? What, this imaginary persecution of white people that you seem to have decided? And then, as if it couldn't get any worse, some conspiracy twats start peddling the idea that this is all fake, that this is all crisis actors because of the lack of blood in the video, which is ironically, at least in part, why the police didn't react correctly. And there's an article by someone called Miri AF, which I don't know whether that's supposed to mean Miri as fuck. And I don't know what Miri is supposed to mean. So how you would be Miri as fuck is sadly something that escapes me. But Miri as fuck decided to write the haunting piece, Henry Nowak is our George Floyd. And not for any decent reasons. Henry Nowak is our George Floyd, in that it's another fake psyop, but aimed at the right rather than the left this time. So she thinks that George Floyd didn't really die.
Cool. Good for her.
Good for her. Good for her, yeah. The official story goes that when the police arrived on the scene, having apparently been called by neighbours, despite there being no eyewitnesses to the attack, that they treated Henry as if he was the antagonist, a racist, and rather than tending to his stab wounds, handcuffed him as he lay dying. Henry uttered the iconic phrase, as first immortalised by America's George Floyd, "I can't breathe." Then, reportedly, he died. Horrendously horrific, terribly tragic, and the pitch-perfect rage bait to send the terminally online right into a state of complete incandescent apoplexy. It's interesting that somebody that believes in crisis actors decides to describe other people as terminally online, but I'm sure everybody reset your irony meters because they're going to break. Just in case you're in any doubt on whether you should be experiencing said state of ultra-inflamed enragement, Elon Musk put out a tweet drawing attention to the situation with a one-word instruction: rage. Social media in general, and Twitter in particular, is hugely influential when it comes to shaping global news narratives. And that is why it's so important for the ruling classes to control the narrative on Twitter via their stable of indentured assets who amplify and reinforce the desired narrative and savage any skeptics. Of course, that is exactly what is going on right now with Henry Nowak operation. And it follows the exact same playbook as all the other ops, whereby it blows up in a very rapid and coordinated way, is promoted by high-profile mainstream voices like Elon Musk and Nigel Farage, who, like Musk, is also demanding rage, and is headline news everywhere. Well, she's describing world events. Something happens, it's reported on, then people talk about it. How convenient. You'll like this. This is a mantra to live your life by. One of my razors is, if it's headline news, it's a ruse. Jesus Christ.
Of course.
Yeah, obviously. What about the headlines that you can go and factually check and stuff, like tomorrow it's the summer solstice, or like people collect at Stonehenge, or like, you know, or it's a white Christmas? Simply meaning that the establishment does not give huge sensationalist international press attention to any situation that they are not in complete control of. What? And they can only be sure that they're in complete control of it if they staged it in the first place and own all of the central performers. I hope people are seeing the symptoms of somebody that is terrified of life here, looking to, although on the surface it seems like this is far more complicated, this is far simpler way of understanding life. Nothing that happens is to chance. If they didn't, and they don't, then there's simply too much margin for error. There's too significant a possibility that survivors will go off script and say the wrong thing, or simply to refuse to play ball at all. After all, who could blame a family in such a situation who refused to speak to the press in any capacity and simply wanted to deal with their grief privately? Hence, a major tell for an op is that the families are always happy to speak to the world's press, and always do in a very composed and coherent way. I don't think they are happy, and they don't do it in a composed and coherent way. And again, wouldn't a simpler explanation be, are you suggesting that no crimes ever happen? I could even go the they take advantage of it route, because we've watched Nigel Farage and Tommy Robinson and Robert Jenrick and Matt Goodwin do that. We've watched them take advantage of a real situation, but this is demented. One could not rely on real families dealing with real grief to always do that. Far from it. They don't. In fact, that's one of the fucking points. Usually, like, we want parents to cry and be upset so that it drives home that emotion, particularly in like missing children cases. We want that. We want that media moment that strikes at the heartstrings of people. So completely the opposite of what this idiot thinks. So for high profile, high stakes operations, which are meant to manipulate and sway millions of people, the rulers don't take those kinds of chances. They don't just opportunistically exploit real events, as some claim. Yeah, that'd be stupid, silly of me. They staged them from the start. Why wouldn't they? Why would they? How else could they ensure exactly the right event at exactly the right time would occur? There's also plenty of the signature that tells that the Henry Nowak situation is fake, including the alleged screenshot from the body cam footage, supposedly showing a dying Henry's hand in cuffs, and to the right there is a gloved hand formed in a claw. Can you remember that? Elon Musk also tweeted that out, which apparently belongs to a policewoman. Yet long fake nails can clearly be seen under the gloves, whereas, to quote an official police resource, police officers are generally prohibited from wearing false nails, acrylics, or extensions whilst on operational duty. What we also have is hastily created online profiles of Henry's family, including a profile where Henry is pictured as a young child doing the Baphomet sign. He's waving, but never mind.
Oh, God.
We can also see usual flourishes of Masonic theatre, such as Henry's father wearing a purple tie outside the courtroom, purple being the colour of deception, and the Masonic checkerboard being inserted onto the ruler measuring the alleged murder weapon. So You know, when they, you know, the rulers that they use to measure like evidence, they've got different metrics on, and one of them is the black and white. I believe it's in centimeters, so that you can see the length. She thinks that's a nod to Freemasonry.
Of course it is. It has to be.
Jesus Christ. Obviously, it's still very
in her world, mate. Oh my God!
Maybe.
Like I said,
yeah,
this is
no
the world. Besides it being the crisis actor stuff, that's nearly the world I was in. You know what I mean? If it's in the head, if it's a headline, it's probably part of the agenda or being used to being like
public.
They jump on it because exactly. But I called it from the nails. Yeah, from the picture of the nails or whatever.
Well, we'll come on to that in a second.
Actor, and she is literally saying it right there.
Yeah. Obviously, it's still very early days with Henry Nowak, as so with Charlie Kirk. We can expect in the subsequent weeks and months to see more and more detailed and conclusive evidence that this is all fake. And the comparison to Kirk is not incidental, as Elon Musk has made it abundantly clear by sharing his meme directly comparing the Henry Nowak event to the Charlie Kirk assassination. If we know that the Charlie Kirk assassination was fake, and we do, then, when such a high-up members of the club as Elon make this direct comparison, we know that he's confirming that the Henry Nowak case is also fake. And that's just ridiculous. Like, but she has one bit of power. That's essentially her thing. Like, if people are talking about it, it's probably fake for some reason. But she does have one piece of, I have to admit, compelling, and some might say powerful evidence that this is all some sort of elaborate street theatre. She writes, "It's all just more tedious theatre, another politicised pantomime, and, as always, and as their code dictates, they tell us directly, as an astute tweeter noted." And this is the revelation of the method thing, which we discussed in our Paul is dead thing. It was made up. The bloke that said that secret societies and black magicians need to tell you what they're going to do in order before they do it in order to make it work or to get your tacit approval, based it on Rosicrucian documents, and these documents never existed. He made it up. So revelation of the method is completely made up. But Henry's surname is Nowak. A slang term for murder is whack. Henry Nowak. Henry no murder. They always tell us explicitly, and as ever, it's up to us to decide whether we believe them or whether we continue to consent to being part of this deception.
Oh my God.
I'm not convinced by that, to be quite honest. I'm very much of the opinion that that's looking for patterns where there are no patterns. Somebody that was convinced was former journalist for the mainstream press, James Dellingpole of the Delling Pod. He tweeted, "As ever, the brilliant Miri AF is one of the first out of the blocks to tell it like it is. Henry Nowak, they have to tell you. This is obviously another psyop." And then, less graciously, James Dellingpole tweets out, "The number of mongs who think this psyop is real. This could be my despairing pinned post for every occasion because they use the same playbook every time." So, remember the clawed hand that people were getting all bent out of shape? Some people had said it proves it was fake. Some people showed that basically it showed that she was wearing false nails. Some people tried to say that it basically indicated that she was some sort of witch or potentially demon. But the fact checkers basically had a look at it and said, does a real image show the claw hand of a police officer arresting fatally stabbed student Henry Nowak in September, England, in December 2025? No, it's not true. The image circulating on social media is an edited screenshot from a video released by the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary. Lead Stories reviewed the original video and found that At no point did any of the arresting officers' right hand appear claw-like. So it was just completely photoshopped, basically. And yeah, embarrassing, absolutely embarrassing. Yeah, so that's from Leeds Stories. We actually know someone from Leeds Stories, Martin. We had fun times with you getting drunk in Latvia, so large up yourself. And congratulations for getting to the bottom of this utter nonsense.